Do not tie me like an animal, she whispered, her cracked lips trembling beneath the desert sun. The soldier holding the rope hesitated. Even through the haze of heat, her voice had a weight that seemed to stop time, a soft but steady defiance. Her wrists were bound behind her, the coarse hemp digging into her sunburned skin. Sweat ran down her temples, carving pale paths through the red dust that covered her face. The year was 1873, and the Mojave Desert looked like the world after creation, endless, raw, and merciless. The ground shimmered with mirages that danced like ghosts, and the horizon stretched into forever, a burning ocean of sand and light. A hot wind swept across the valley, carrying with it the faint scent of sagebrush and ash. Her name was Aiyana. She was 22, daughter of a healer known among her people for her quiet kindness. She had never raised her voice in anger, never struck another person, never broken a vow. But now, her own tribe stood against her. She had been accused of the one thing no Mojave could forgive: betrayal. It had happened 3 days earlier, when the soldiers came. They were lost, parched and half dead from thirst, wandering the desert after their horses had collapsed. The tribe had watched them from the cliffs, eyes cold and wary. These white men had come before down with guns, with promises, with diseases. They had taken what they wanted and left the land bleeding. But these soldiers were not raiders. They were desperate. Aiyana had seen them stumble beneath the sun, their lips split and bleeding, their skin burned to the bone. One of them had fallen to his knees, clawing at the sand as if water might appear beneath his fingers. She could not bear it. That night, against the warnings of her kin, she led them to the sacred spring, a hidden oasis that only her tribe knew. It was the tribe's lifeblood, a secret kept through generations. From that spring they drew water during drought, medicine for the sick and blessings for newborns. It was more than survival. It was spirit. When the elders found out what she had done, the decision came swiftly. She had broken the covenant. She had given the enemy what was meant only for her people. It did not matter that she had saved lives, even the lives of men who might one day return to kill them. Mercy in their eyes had become weakness. Now as the morning sun climbed higher, the tribe gathered to witness her punishment. Men stood in silence, their faces carved with dust and sorrow. Women clutched their children close, whispering prayers. The young warriors held spears, though their eyes could not meet hers. The elders had chosen an ancient sentence: the drying burial. It was not a quick death. The condemned would be planted in the sand beneath the full sun, unable to move, unable to escape. The heat would take them slowly, first the lips, then the skin, then the mind. The desert would drink every drop of moisture until only dust remained. Aiyana knew this sentence well. Her grandmother had once told her of a woman who had suffered the same fate, long before the white men came. It was said her screams had carried for miles, turning into songs of wind after she died. As they buried her feet in the sand, Aiyana closed her eyes. She felt the dry earth swallowing her, grain by grain, until it pressed around her ankles, her calves, her knees. The sun struck her face like fire. The world shimmered in white and gold. Every breath tasted of salt and dust. An old man stepped forward, Chief Nahova, the one who had known her since she was a child. His voice trembled, though his words were steady. "Aiyana, daughter of Lena, you have dishonored your ancestors," he said. "You gave our sacred water to those who took our land. You have brought shame upon your people. May the desert judge you as it has judged all who forget who they are." Her throat ached with thirst, but she forced her voice to rise. "I did not forget," she said softly. "I remembered that they too were dying." The chief looked away. "Then you remember wrong." 2 young warriors tied her wrist to a stone pillar behind her, a tall, sun-bleached remnant of ancient rock that rose from the desert like a broken tooth. When they stepped back, Aiyana was fixed in place, unable to sit or kneel. The sand beneath her feet burned as if the earth itself resented her. Hours passed. The sun moved slowly, dragging its light across her skin. Her lips split. Her eyes burned. Flies gathered at the corners of her mouth. The tribe remained nearby, silent and unmoving, as if bound by an invisible weight of guilt. Children peeked from behind their mothers' skirts, whispering questions. "Why do they hurt her?" one asked. "Because she gave away what was ours," a mother answered, not looking at her. But in her heart, even that mother was not certain. By midday, the heat became a living thing. It wrapped around Aiyana like a shroud. Her breath came shallow and ragged. She could no longer tell where her body ended and the desert began. The horizon wavered, the sky and earth melting together. She thought of her father, who had died in a flood years ago, when rain still came to this land. He had told her once, "Kindness is not weakness. It is the only strength the cruel can never take." She had believed that. She still did. But kindness had brought her here. Her vision swam. She saw the elders watching her from the shade of a rock. They looked smaller now. Frail, frightened men who had lived too long under fear. She wondered if they could still tell the difference between protecting their people and punishing their own. "Please," she whispered hoarsely, "let me see the spring once more." No one moved. The wind rose, scattering sand into her face. Her lips bled. Still she prayed. Not for freedom, that hope was gone. She prayed for understanding, for someone to see that mercy was not betrayal. By late afternoon, she began to drift between waking and dream. She thought she saw her mother kneeling beside her, stroking her hair. She thought she heard the sound of running water. But when she opened her eyes, there was only sand, endless, golden, cruel. Then, through the haze, something glimmered far away. At first, she thought it was another mirage, a trick of the sun. But as the light shifted, she saw it again. A flicker of movement white against the red horizon. Her heart clenched. It was a flag, tiny, distant, but real. Soldiers. The very men she had saved. The tribe saw it too. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some looked uneasy. Others turned away, afraid of what their own hearts might say. Aiyana felt a strange peace settle over her. The truth was coming. Maybe not to save her, but to show them what mercy truly looked like. The wind changed direction. The air cooled just enough for her to breathe again. Her tears, dry before they could fall, left salt trails on her cheeks. As the soldiers drew nearer, their silhouettes shimmering through the heat, she whispered her final prayer. "Let them see me," she said softly. "Let them remember." The chief stood frozen, his face unreadable. He had spent his life trying to protect his people from the outside world. But now that world was walking toward him, carrying the proof that compassion had not been treason but courage. The desert grew still, as if the earth itself waited. Aiyana's body trembled, her voice fading to a whisper. "I gave them water," she said, each word breaking in the air. "Because they were dying." Like us, no one answered. Only the wind replied, curling through the stones like a sigh. The sun sank lower. Her shadow stretched long across the sand. And in that moment, half light, half fire, she looked less like a condemned woman and more like something eternal, carved into the desert's memory. The soldiers would arrive by dawn. But by then she would already belong to the land. Still, her eyes never closed. She watched the white flag approach, shimmering through heat and dust until the world turned to light. And the desert, ancient and merciless, held its breath. By the time the soldiers reached her, the desert was still and silent, as if holding its breath in shame. The dawn light had softened the land, painting the sand in shades of rose and ash. But where Aiyana stood, the world felt hollow. She was there, upright and unmoving. Her body bound between the stones, her head bowed slightly as though in prayer. She no longer breathed. Her skin had turned to bronze beneath the sun, her lips cracked and dry, her eyes open and staring toward the horizon. Toward them. The men stopped several yards away. None of them spoke. Dust rose from their boots and drifted around her like a ghostly veil. Captain Reeves was the first to step forward. His face was gaunt, his uniform torn from the days of wandering through the desert without direction or water. The white flag he carried hung limp in the still morning air. He dropped to one knee beside her, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch her arm. The flesh was warm still, sun-baked, stiff but not yet cold. He swallowed hard. "She's gone," he whispered. Behind him the other soldiers shifted uneasily. They had seen death in war and sickness in the hands of enemies, but never like this. Never with such still dignity, such cruel quiet. The chief and his elders stood at a distance, watching in silence. Their faces were unreadable, carved from the same stone that surrounded them. Around them the rest of the tribe gathered, moving slowly, hesitantly. The women murmured prayers. Children hid behind their mothers, peering out at the strange sight of pale men kneeling in their sacred sands. Captain Reeves rose to his feet. His voice was low but steady, though anger burned beneath it. "She tried to save us," he said, looking directly at the chief. "She gave us water when no one else would. And this is how she was thanked?" No one answered. The chief's eyes flickered to the horizon, as if searching for words among the dunes. "She broke the sacred rule," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "The water of life belongs to the people. It was not hers to give." Reeves took a step closer, his boots grinding against the dry sand. "No," he said, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "It belonged to the living, and now she's dead because of it." A silence followed that seemed to stretch forever. Even the wind refused to move. Then from among the gathered crowd an old woman stepped forward. Her hair was long and silver, her back bent but her gaze sharp. It was Aiyana's mother. She approached slowly, her bare feet leaving faint prints in the sand. The tribe parted to let her pass. When she reached her daughter's body, she did not cry. She only reached up with both hands and touched Aiyana's face, gently as if afraid to disturb the fragile shell of her. Her fingers lingered along her cheekbones, her lips, her eyes. "She was not a traitor," she said quietly. "She was my child." The word seemed to pierce something in the air. The chief closed his eyes. "She gave life to those who would have died." The mother continued. "Does the land not give life to all, even those who take from it? The sun shines on the enemy as it does on the friend." The captain bowed his head. The old woman turned to him, her voice softening. "You must take her," she said. "Bury her near the spring. It was her choice. Her heart belongs there now." The soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. Reeves hesitated. "We'll bury her," he said finally. "With honor." He motioned to his men, and together they began to loosen the ropes that held her. The fibers cracked and split, hardened by heat. Her body sagged forward, weightless, as though the desert itself was reluctant to let her go. When they freed her feet, the sand that had held her upright collapsed, covering her toes like a final embrace. They lifted her gently, wrapping her in a soldier's coat. Her hair, once dark and shining, now shimmered dull gold in the rising sun. The chief watched, saying nothing. As they carried her toward the spring, the tribe followed at a distance. No one ordered them to. It was simply something the heart required. The air grew cooler as they neared the canyon, and the sound of trickling water echoed faintly between the rocks. The spring lay hidden among reeds and stones, a small pool fed by an underground vein that had sustained the Mojave for generations. It was beautiful even now, a miracle of movement in a world of stillness. Captain Reeves knelt by the water, touching it with his fingertips. The coolness made his chest ache. "This is what she died for," he murmured. The soldiers began to dig. The ground near the spring was softer, dark with moisture. Each shovel of earth released a faint, rich scent, the smell of life, of something sacred. Aiyana's mother stood nearby, watching in silence. Her eyes were dry, but her lips moved in prayer, whispering words in her native tongue that carried through the air like a hymn. When the grave was ready, they laid Aiyana within it. Reeves placed a canteen beside her, still half full of the same water she had once given them. "You saved us," he said quietly. "We'll not forget." The chief stepped forward. His face was pale beneath the desert sun, lined with age and something heavier. Regret. "She remembered what we had forgotten," he said, that even an enemy has thirst. He took a handful of sand and let it fall into the grave, the grains catching the light like sparks. May the earth forgive where we could not. One by one the tribe followed, adding their offerings and feathers, beads, small stones from the riverbed. The soldiers did the same, laying bullets and medals, tokens of their own broken code of honor. Two worlds met there, side by side, bound by one woman's death. By the time they finished, the sun had risen high again, burning away the last trace of morning cool. Yet for once it did not feel cruel. The spring shimmered beside them, its surface reflecting the light like a mirror of forgiveness. A breeze moved through the canyon, carrying the faint scent of sage and dust. Somewhere far above, an eagle circled. Reeves remained behind after the others began to leave. He stood by her grave, his hand resting on the rough cross they had built from 2 rifle stocks bound with cord. "You gave us life," he whispered, "and they gave you death. I don't know which of us deserved your mercy more." When he turned to go, he noticed something small near the edge of the spring. A single wildflower, pale and fragile, pushing through the stones. He knelt beside it, touching the petals. "Even here," he murmured half to himself, "life finds a way." Over the months that followed, the spring became a place of quiet pilgrimage. Travelers and tribes alike came to rest by its waters. The story of Aiyana spread across the desert, told by those who had known her and by those who had only heard her name. Some said the water tasted sweeter after her death. Others claimed flowers began to grow where none had before. And there were those who swore that, on certain nights when the moon hung full over the desert, you could hear her voice in the wind, not crying, but singing softly, as if the land itself were remembering her mercy. Years passed. The soldiers who had been saved by her kindness left the desert behind, scattered to distant posts and different wars. But Captain Reeves never forgot. When he was an old man, he returned once more to that spring. The tribe had long since moved north, and the stones around her grave had been smoothed by time. Yet the water still flowed clear and quiet. He knelt again and set down a small wooden carving, a dove, simple and worn by his hands. "You were right," he said, his voice thin with age. "Kindness is strength, and the world still doesn't understand it." He sat there until sunset, listening to the wind. For a long while he thought he heard her laugh, soft, distant like the first trickle of water after a long drought. And when he finally rose to leave, he saw that the flower still bloomed beside her grave, bending gently toward the light. Aiyana's name lived on, not in books or monuments, but in whispers, the kind the desert carries and never forgets. Her story became a reminder that mercy is often the hardest truth, and that love in its purest form is rarely safe. They called her death humiliating, but the desert knew better. It had taken her pain and turned it into beauty, a lesson written in sand, in wind, and in water that still flowed long after her bones had turned to dust. And so her story lingered, a warning and a whisper, reminding all who passed that mercy and survival often war within the same heart. If you felt the weight of her story, like this video, subscribe and ring the bell to hear more untold histories. If you were in Aiyana's place, would you have shared the water, knowing it could mean your death?